September 15, 1944. 8:28 hours, 1,000 yards off the White Beach, Peleliu. The air inside the LVT for Amtrak tastes like diesel fumes and salt spray, a thick, oily cocktail that coats the back of Corporal Thomas Vance's throat. He grips his M1 Garand so tightly his knuckles have turned the color of the crushed coral waiting for him on the shore. Around him, 30 other Marines of the 1st Marine Division sway with the lurching heave of the Pacific Ocean. They are young, bronzed by the tropical sun, but their eyes are old, hollowed out by the memories of Guadalcanal and Cape Gloucester. Over the roar of the engines, a deafening thunder rolls from the horizon behind them. The battleships Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Mississippi are tearing the sky apart. 14-inch shells scream overhead, sounding like freight trains derailing in midair, before slamming into the dense green jungle of the island ahead. Vance risks a glance over the gunwale. Peleliu looks less like an island and more like a smoking funeral pyre. For 3 days, the Navy has hammered this 6-mile strip of rock. Admiral Oldendorf had promised them that the Japanese defenders had been neutralized. He had said they would likely just walk onto the beach and mop up the survivors. "Look at that," shouts Private Miller, a fresh replacement from Ohio, pointing toward the churning smoke clouds engulfing the shoreline. "Nothing could live through that. We're gonna be home for Christmas, boys." Vance doesn't smile. He watches the smoke. It hangs heavy and motionless, trapped by the humidity. He knows that silence in the Pacific is a liar. The Amtrak grinds over the reef, the metal tracks shrieking against the coral. The ramp drops with a heavy metallic clang. "Move, move, get off the fatal funnel," the platoon sergeant screams. Vance charges into the waist-deep water. It is hot, almost boiling. He expects the chaotic, screaming banzai charge that usually greets a landing, the suicidal rush of infantry trying to push them back into the sea. But there is no charge. There is only the eerie, rhythmic thump-thump-thump of heavy machine guns opening up from invisible positions. The beach is a slaughterhouse of geometry. The Japanese are not running at them, they are waiting for them. Crossfire lanes have been pre-calculated to the inch. Vance throws himself behind a log barricade as bullets chew up the sand where his head was a second ago. He looks up the beach. The jungle that was supposed to be flattened is hiding concrete pillboxes reinforced with coral rock, virtually impervious to the naval shells that had rained down for days. Deep inside the limestone spine of the island, Colonel Kunio Nakagawa is rewriting the rules of war. He sits in a command post carved 60 feet beneath the surface, the air still and humid. The vibrations of the American shelling dust his map table with fine white powder. But he does not flinch. Unlike the commanders on Saipan or Tarawa, Nakagawa has forbidden the banzai charge. He knows he cannot defeat the American industrial machine head-on. He cannot match their battleships, their planes, or their infinite supplies. But he can make them bleed. He has turned Peleliu into a honeycomb. Over 500 caves have been connected by tunnels, armed with heavy artillery, mortar, and machine guns behind sliding steel doors. Nakagawa's strategy is not victory, it is attrition. He intends to make the Americans pay for every yard of coral with a gallon of blood. Back on the beach, the heat is becoming a weapon in itself. It is 115 degrees Fahrenheit. The coral rock reflects the sun like a mirror. Men are collapsing not just from bullets, but from heat exhaustion. Vance crawls forward, the sharp coral tearing his dungarees. They need to push and land to the airfield, but they are pinned. He spots a Japanese firing slit cut into the base of a limestone ridge, perfectly camouflaged by burnt foliage. "Grenade," Vance yells. He pulls the pin and hurls the pineapple explosive. It detonates right at the aperture. Silence. Then, seconds later, the machine gun roars back to life, spitting death at the same rate. The realization hits Vance like a physical blow. The grenade didn't fail. It just didn't matter. The enemy, in the pillbox, they are under it, behind angles and blast walls that deflect the shrapnel. "We can't dig them out," Miller screams, pressing his face into the sand as tracers snap overhead. "Rifles don't work. Mortar just bounce off." Vance looks at the ridge line. It is a solid wall of stone, seemingly alive with fire. The realization dawns on the Marines on White Beach. The Navy didn't soften anything up. They just rearranged the dirt on top of a subterranean fortress. The American doctrine of heavy bombardment and infantry maneuver is failing. You can feel the panic rising in the unit. They are fighting ghosts. A sniper shot rings out, and a corpsman goes down. The shot came from a spider hole, a tiny trapdoor in the ground that opens, fires, and closes in a second. The Japanese are mocking them. They are safe in their cool, dark tunnels, while the Americans bake and bleed on the exposed rock. The conventional weapons of war, the rifle, the grenade, the artillery shell, are useless against an enemy who has become part of the island itself. To take this rock, the Marines will have to stop thinking like soldiers and start thinking like exterminators. They will need something that doesn't rely on shrapnel or concussion. They will need something that can turn corners, flow like water, and consume everything it touches. As the sun sets on D-Day, painting the bloody surf in hues of violet and orange, the order comes down from the battalion commander. It is a grim admission that the battle has changed. Bring up the engineers. The radio crackles, and tell them to bring the tanks. The ones with the erratic firing mechanisms. Vance wipes sweat and grime from his eyes. He knows what that means. The era of the rifleman is over on Peleliu. The era of the torch is about to begin. September 16, 1944, 14 o'clock hours, the edge of Peleliu airfield. The heat shimmering off the airfield is hallucinations grade. The coral runway, blasted white by the sun and naval artillery, stretches out like a bone-dry desert. To cross it is suicide. The Japanese control the high ground, the Umurbagal Mountain, soon to be christened Bloody Nose Ridge by the men dying beneath it. From those jagged limestone peaks, Colonel Nakagawa's artillery observers look down on the Marines like gods watching insects in a jar. Corporal Vance is pressed flat into a shell crater, the coral grit biting into his cheek. His squad is pinned, again. Every time they lift their heads, a Nambu machine gun shatters from a cave mouth 300 yards away, tucked so deep into a crevice that airstrikes can't touch it. Here they come, Miller yells, pointing back toward the tree line. Rumbling out of the shattered palms comes the cavalry. It isn't a horse, it's 30 tons of American steel. An M4A3 Sherman tank clatters onto the airfield, its tracks grinding the coral dust into fine powder. From his observation slit high on the ridge, Lieutenant Cato watches the tank emerge. He adjusts his binoculars, a sneer touching his lips. He has seen these American monsters before. They are clumsy beasts. He picks up the field telephone. Anti-tank gun number 4. Wait until it is within 500 meters. Aim for the tracks. Immobilize it, then we will swarm it at night. Cato feels secure. His position is behind 4 feet of reinforced concrete and 10 feet of solid limestone. He is invisible. He is invincible. The Americans can bang on the door all day with their 75mm cannons. They will never get in, but this Sherman is different. The main gun barrel is shorter, thicker, and shrouded in a strange, bulbous casing. There is no muzzle brake. Inside the tank, there are no stacks of high explosive shells. Instead, the hull is packed with tanks of a new, viscous liquid gel thickened with aluminum soaps of naphthenic and palmitic acids, napalm. The tank commander, Sergeant Red O'Malley, peers through his periscope. He doesn't look for a target to punch through. He looks for an opening to pour into. He spots the dark slit of Cato's bunker complex at the base of the ridge. Cokes is cold, O'Malley says into the intercom. Main gun, range, 150. Give him the hot stuff. The Sherman halts. The turret rotates with a mechanical whine. Lieutenant Cato watches, puzzled. The tank has stopped well out of effective range for small arms. It isn't firing its machine guns. It's just sitting there. Then, the world turns orange. There is no boom. There is a terrifying, high-pressure whoosh, like the intake of 1,000 jet engines. A solid rod of fire erupts from the tank's main gun. It doesn't look like normal fire. It looks like a physical object, a burning rope of liquid that defies gravity. It arcs through the air, covering the 150 yards in seconds. Kato gasps. The flame doesn't splash against the rock face and burn out. It strikes the embrasure of the bunker next to his and sticks. The gel clings to the stone, burning at 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. But the horror is in the physics. Because it is liquid, it flows. The burning gel splashes through the firing slit, ignoring the blast walls designed to stop shrapnel. Inside the bunker, the air instantly superheats. The oxygen is sucked out of the room to feed the voracious fire. The Japanese machine gunners don't have time to scream. The pressure wave of heat chars their lungs before the flames even touch them. The ammunition belts for the heavy machine gun cook off, detonating in a frantic pop-pop-pop that sounds like firecrackers in a furnace. Kato drops the phone, his hands trembling. This is not war as he was taught at the academy. This is industrial extermination. Back on the airfield, Vance watches in awe and horror. The Zippo tank, as the Marines call it, isn't done. It adjusts its aim, walking the stream of fire toward the next cave opening. The stream bounces off the back wall of the cave and splashes around corners, hunting the defenders in the dark. Jesus ... double quotes Miller whispers, the color draining from his face. Did you see that? It went inside. The psychological impact shifts instantly. Moments ago, the Japanese were the hunters, safe in their holes. Now, their greatest strength, the enclosed, fortified tunnel network has become their tomb. The tunnels act as chimneys, drawing the fire and the deadly carbon monoxide deeper into the mountain. Nakagawa's phone rings in the deep command post. The reports are frantic, bordering on hysterical. They are burning the rocks. Colonel, the fire flows like water. Men are suffocating 3 levels down. Nakagawa stares at the map. He had prepared for gas. He had prepared for bombardment. He had not prepared for the Americans to turn the atmosphere itself into a weapon. The Bushido Code demands an honorable death in combat to strike down the enemy or die by the sword. There is no honor in being baked alive in a dark hole, unable to even see the enemy who killed you. On the surface, the Zippo tank runs dry. The flame sputters and dies, leaving a black, smoking scar on the white cliff face. The smell drifts across the lines, a sickly sweet mixture of gasoline, roasting meat, and sulfur. Vance stands up. The suppression fire from the ridge has stopped. The silence is heavy, broken only by the crackle of cooling rock. Move up, the sergeant barks, his voice lacking its usual aggression. Even he is shaken. Check the holes. Satchel charges on the entrances. Seal them in. Vance moves forward, passing the scorched bunker. He peers inside. It is a charnel house. The equipment is melted. The bodies are unrecognizable, fused to their weapons. He looks up at the towering ridges of the Yumurbergal. There are hundreds more caves, thousands more defenders. The realization hits him. The Americans have found the solution, but the cost of applying it will be a slow, grinding nightmare. They will have to burn this island one hole at a time. And the Japanese, realizing their doom, are about to change tactics again. If they cannot hold the caves, they will turn themselves into human bombs. As the sun climbs higher, baking the dead and the living alike, a low chant begins to drift from the deeper caves, echoing through the limestone vents. It is a mournful, rhythmic sound. They are singing the death poems. September 20th, 1944, 10:15 hours, the Horseshoe Valley, Yumurbergal Pocket. The Zippo tanks are miracles of engineering, but they have a flaw. They are wide, heavy, and bound by gravity. The Yumurbergal, a jagged nightmare of vertical spires and narrow ravines where tracks cannot tread. Here, the war becomes intimately personal again. Private First Class Arthur Artie Moore adjusts the straps on his shoulders, wincing as the canvas bites into his sunburned skin. On his back sits the M22 to Flamethrower. It weighs 70 pounds to tanks of thickened gasoline and a smaller tank of compressed nitrogen. To the other Marines in K Company, Moore is a savior. To the Japanese snipers watching from the crags above, he is the highest value target on the island. We got a spider hole, top of that rise. 10 o'clock. Screams Corporal Vance, pointing toward a jagged fissure 50 feet up a near vertical slope. A single shot cracks out, kicking up dust inches from Moore's boot. The Japanese defenders have learned. They know that if they kill the rifleman, another takes his place. But if they kill the man with the tanks on his back, the fire stops, and if they hit the tanks just right, well, Moore tries not to think about that. Cover me. Moore yells, his voice muffled by the humidity and fear. The squad opens up with everything they have, bars and garrons chipping away at the limestone, forcing the Japanese heads down. Moore scrambles up the loose coral scree. He moves with an awkward, lumbering gait, unbalanced by the liquid sloshing on his back. Every step is a gamble. He is a walking bomb, climbing into the mouth of the enemy. He reaches a small defilade, chest heaving, sweat stinging his eyes. He is 20 feet from the cave mouth now. He can smell them, the unwashed bodies, the stale rice, the cordite. He unlocks the safety on the wand. He hears the hiss of the pilot light igniting. Click, hiss. A tiny blue flame appears at the nozzle. Inside the cave, Sergeant Yamato sees the shadow fall across the entrance. He knows what is coming. There is no escape route here. This is a dead-end fighting position. He grips his Arisaka rifle, but his hands are slick with sweat. The psychological terror of the flamethrower is unique. It strips away the soldier's illusion of agency. Against a bullet, you can duck. Against a grenade, you can dive. Against the fire, there is only the weight. Tenno Haika Banzai. Yamato screams, not in triumph, but in a desperate bid to summon courage for the end. Moore steps around the rock face. He doesn't aim, he points. He squeezes the rear trigger to release the fuel, then the front trigger to ignite it. Whoosh. The recoil pushes Moore backward. A solid rod of orange fury erupts from the nozzle. It isn't a spray, it's a focused jet of napalm gel. It strikes the cave roof, splashes downward, and fills the void. The scream that follows is not human. It is a high-pitched, primal shriek that cuts through the roar of the fire. Suddenly, a figure bursts from the smoke. It is Yamato. He is engulfed in flames, his uniform disintegrating, his skin blackening in real time. He stumbles blindly toward Moore, arms flailing, a living torch fueled by the very weapon destroying him. Don't let him touch you, Vance screams from below. Moore backs up, terrified, the heat radiating from the dying man intense enough to singe eyebrows 5 yards away. A bar gunner from the squad fires a short burst. Yamato drops, his body curling into a fetal position as the napalm continues to burn on his corpse, fueled by his own body fat. Moore cuts the stream. The silence rushes back in, deafening. He has 4 seconds of fuel left. God Almighty, whispers Miller, staring at the smoking remains. This scene plays out hundreds of times across the ridges. The Americans have systematized the horror. It is called corkscrew and blowtorch. First, artillery and mortar strip the foliage. Then, riflemen drive the defenders underground corkscrew. Finally, the engineers and flamethrower men arrive to burn them out blowtorch. But the Japanese are adapting. They realize that if they stay in the caves, they die. So they begin to weaponize the smoke. As Moore moves to the next ridge, the ground beneath him trembles. A hidden trapdoor opens behind the squad. 3 Japanese soldiers emerge, not with rifles, but with satchel charges and bayonets strapped to bamboo poles. They are not trying to shoot. They are sprinting toward the flamethrower operators. Artie, behind you. Moore spins around, the heavy tanks shifting his center of gravity. He is too slow. The Japanese soldier lunges, the bayonet gleaming. This is the brutal reality of Peleliu. High-tech industrial warfare meeting medieval savagery in a space no wider than a closet. Vance swings his rifle like a club, smashing the attacker in the jaw, sending him sprawling before he can detonate his charge. The Marine squad descends on the infiltrators with knives and entrenching tools. It is a frenzy of stabbing and hacking. When it's over, Moore leans against a scorched rock, shaking uncontrollably. He looks at his fuel gauge. Empty. I need a reload. he croaks. No time, Vance says, looking up at the peaks of the Five Sisters. The tanks are moving up. They're bringing the bulldozers. The battle has escalated again. Fire is not enough. The Japanese are too dug in, too fanatical. If the Americans can't burn them out, they will simply bury them alive. The engineering war is about to reach its grim crescendo. October 3, 1944, 13:45 hours. The Death Valley approached a bloody nose ridge. The sound of Peleliu has changed. In the first weeks, it was the sharp crack of rifles and the thump of mortar. Now, in the fourth week of a battle that was supposed to last for days, the dominant sound is the grinding, mechanical roar of heavy industry. Corporal Vance lies prone behind a shattered limestone outcropping. He lights a cigarette, his hands shaking slightly less than they did a week ago. He is numb. The terror has been replaced by a dull, grim efficiency. He watches as a yellow beast, painted in hastily applied olive drab, lumbers up the ravine. It is a Caterpillar D8 bulldozer. In any other context, it would be clearing land for a highway in Kansas. Here, it is the Grim Reaper. The driver, a Navy Seabee named Machinist Mate Williams, sits exposed in the open cab. He has welded scrap steel plates around the seat, creating a jagged, rusty bathtub of armor. He chews on a cigar, his eyes fixed on a cave opening 30 yards ahead. Covering fire, Vance shouts. The Marines unleash a torrent of lead at the cave mouth, keeping the Japanese heads down. The bulldozer doesn't shoot back. It doesn't have a gun. It simply raises its massive steel blade, lowers the gear, and pushes. Inside the cave, Private Sato hears the engine roar. It is louder than a tank. He rushes to the aperture with his Type 99 machine gun. They are coming. Prepare grenades, but there is no infantry rush. There is only a mountain of crushed coral and dirt rising before his eyes. Williams revs the D8's engine. Black smoke belches from the stack. The blade bites into the loose scree of the ridge, pushing tons of rock and soil forward. The earth rises like a tsunami wave. Sato screams, firing blindly into the dirt. The bullets thud harmlessly into the mound. The light in the cave begins to dim. The circle of sunlight at the entrance shrinks from a door, to a window, to a coin, to nothing. Darkness. Outside, Williams reverses the dozer, the tracks clanking rhythmically. He drops the blade again and packs the earth down. He is sealing a tomb. That's one, Williams yells over the engine noise, shifting gears. Where's the next one? Vance stares at the fresh mound of earth. There are 20 men inside that cave. They have food, water, and ammunition. But they have no air, and they have no way out. The horror of it settles in his gut. It is a slow, suffocating execution carried out with construction equipment. Up the ridge, 50 yards, Vance points. This is the new reality of the Pacific War. The Americans have realized that fighting the Japanese man-to-man is a fool's game. The Japanese willingness to die makes them dangerous. Their refusal to surrender makes them pests. And you don't duel with pests, you exterminate them. The coordination is terrifyingly effective. A Zippo tank fires a stream of napalm into a cave to consume the oxygen and stun the defenders. Before the smoke clears, the bulldozer moves in and seals the entrance. Burn, then bury. Colonel Nakagawa, deep in his shrinking perimeter, feels the walls closing in. The reports are no longer about lost positions, they are about lost contact. Entire companies simply vanish. There is no radio transmission, no final bonds I charge, just silence. He realizes the Americans are not trying to conquer the island anymore. They are erasing it. They are dismantling the geography of Peleliu to get to him. On the ridge, the heat is breaking the men. It is 110 degrees. The smell of decaying bodies, unable to be buried in the hard rock, is overpowering, but the American supply line is relentless. Vance watches a team of engineers rig a pipe to a fuel truck. They aren't using a flamethrower. They are running a hose directly from a tanker truck into a ventilation shaft on top of the ridge. What are they doing? Miller asks, wiping grime from his face. They're flooding the lower levels, Vance says quietly. They pump hundreds of gallons of diesel fuel and gasoline mixed down the dark throat of the mountain. They wait for gravity to carry it deep into the command bunkers. Then, an engineer drops a single phosphorus grenade down the shaft. The ground shudders. A dull hump resonates through the soles of their boots. Smoke geysers out of cracks in the rock hundreds of yards away. It is impossible engineering, turning the enemy's own tunnel network into a massive internal combustion engine. As evening falls, the bulldozer shuts down. The silence that follows is heavy. Vance looks at the sealed caves dotting the hillside like scars. He wonders if the men inside are dead yet, or if they are sitting in the pitch black, gasping for the last molecules of oxygen, listening to the muffled voices of the Americans outside eating their rations. "Hey, Vance," Miller says, his voice cracking, "do you think they know? Do you think they know we're just burying them?" "They know," Vance replies, staring at the white coral rock that has become a graveyard. "That's why they won't stop shooting. But the shooting is getting sporadic. The Japanese resistance is fracturing. The impossible resilience of the enemy is breaking under the weight of American industrial cruelty." Yet, as the Marines prepare for the final push to the summit, they find something that shakes them even more than the combat. In the pack of a dead Japanese officer, dug out from a partially sealed cave, they find a letter. It isn't a fanatical screed to the Emperor, it's a drawing. A crude, crayon drawing of a house with a cherry tree, sent from a daughter in Osaka. Vance looks at the drawing, then at the blackened, bulldozed landscape of Peleliu. He realizes that while the machines can bury the enemy, they cannot bury the memory of what was done here. "Saddle up," the sergeant whispers. "We finish this tomorrow. The final stand awaits." The last remnants of the Japanese garrison cornered in the wildest part of the ridges. There will be no more bulldozers there, only rifles, knives, and the end of the world. November 24, 1944, 17 o'clock hours, the final pocket. The war on Peleliu ends not with a bang, but with a whisper of smoke. Deep inside the final command cave, 60 feet beneath the surface of the China Wall Ridge, the air is foul. It is a toxic soup of unwashed bodies, gangrene, and despair. Colonel Kunio Nakagawa stands before his remaining officers. His uniform, once immaculate, is stained with the coral dust that has become the shroud of his regiment. He holds a small ceramic cup of water, a precious luxury. Around him, the radio operator taps out the final message to the headquarters on Corps. It is not a plea for help. It is a poem. Sakura, sakura, cherry blossoms, cherry blossoms. It signifies that the 10,000 men of the garrison have fallen like petals in a storm. They have done their duty. They have held the Americans for 2.5 months on an island that was supposed to fall in 4 days. But the cost has been absolute. Burn the colors. Nakagawa orders quietly. Lieutenant General Murai watches as the regimental flag, the sacred symbol of the Emperor, is fed into a small fire. The smoke curls up toward the limestone ceiling, joining the soot of weeks of battle. There is no ammunition left. There is no food. Above them, they can hear the heavy boots of the U.S. Army's 81st Infantry Division, who have relieved the exhausted Marines. Nakagawa kneels. He unbuttons his tunic. He does not fear death. He fears capture. He fears the shame of existing in a world where the American industrial machine has conquered the Japanese spirit. He draws his blade. The sound of the shot or the blade, accounts vary, is swallowed by the stone. The resistance of Peleliu dies with him. Topside, Corporal Vance is no longer on the line. He has been rotated back to the beach, waiting for the transport ship. He sits on a crate of empty mortar shells, looking back at the Umurbergal. The island is unrecognizable. When they landed on September 15th, Peleliu was a lush, green tropical paradise. Now, it is a moonscape. The shelling, the napalm, and the bulldozers have stripped every inch of vegetation. The white coral backbone of the island stands exposed, bleached by the sun and the fire. It looks like the picket skeleton of a leviathan. "Hey, Vance," Miller says, limping over. He survived. Miraculously, though his eyes stare at nothing. You hear, "It's over, they found the colonel." Vance nods slowly. He takes a drag from a cigarette that tastes like ash. "It was over a month ago, Miller. We just didn't know how to stop killing them." He looks at the flamethrower tank parked nearby. The Zippo. The paint is blistered, the barrel blackened. It sits silent now, a dormant dragon. The Japanese defenders had made a fatal miscalculation. They believed that their willingness to die, their Yamato Damashi spirit, would be enough to break the American resolve. They thought the Americans were soft, dependent on luxury, unable to stomach the brutality of close-quarters combat. But they were wrong. The Americans didn't break. They simply industrialized the killing. When the rifle failed, they brought the tank. When the tank failed, they brought the flamethrower. When the fire failed, they brought the bulldozer. They treated the war not as a duel of honor, but as an engineering project. The statistics of Peleliu are staggering. Of the approximately 11,000 Japanese defenders, only 202 were captured, mostly laborers. The rest were burned, buried, or blown apart in the caves. The U.S. suffered over 9,800 casualties, making it the bloodiest battle in Marine Corps' history up to that point. And for what? Vance watches a C-47 transport plane land on the airfield they bled to capture. It taxis past the wreckage of Japanese Zeros. The airfield is operational. The strategic value of the island is already being questioned by the brass. MacArthur is moving on to the Philippines. Peleliu will be forgotten, left to rot in the sun, but the lesson remains. As the landing craft arrives to take Vance off the rock, he looks down at the water. It is clear again, the blood finally washed away by the tide. But he knows that if he were to dig a few feet down into that white coral, he would find them, the thousands of men, sealed in their stone tombs, weapons in hand, waiting for an enemy that has already moved on. The Japanese soldiers couldn't believe the Americans would burn an entire island to flush them out. In the end, the Americans didn't just flush them out. They turned the island into a funeral pyre, proving that in a war between the spirit and the machine burns hotter. Vance climbs the net of the transport ship. He doesn't look back.